Taking a look at the equity index futures today, I want to focus on the NASDAQ today as the biggest mover of the block. When you look at the group as a whole, we're actually seeing the Dow futures and the Russell futures a little bit lower as we move in towards the close. The S&P futures slightly higher, but the NASDAQ futures up quite significantly, up just under 0.5% today, currently right around the 92.10 level. Now, we did see a high intraday of 92.54, and that is an all-time high. And if we see the NASDAQ futures close here in this current range, then that would be an all-time closing high for the NASDAQ futures as well. And when you look at, I think, some of the driving factors here, we saw a nice reversal from yesterday's weakness. Some of the components here are really, I think, the earnings and some of the leadership when you look at the tech sector as a whole. We saw some pretty strong returns today from the likes of Intel being up quite significantly. We also had Tesla helping to support the NASDAQ 100 index and therefore pushing those futures up as well. And you can look at other names like JD, Texas Instruments, as well as IDEX Labs or IDXX as the big drivers to this upward momentum today. Now, if you look at the laggards today, Netflix would be the top of the list when we see that down about 3%. We also saw Qualcomm down about a little over 1.5%. So those were some of the names putting a little bit of a governor or pressure on the index and therefore limiting the upside to the futures today. Now, I mentioned that as we go through this week, earnings is going to be the focus and probably dictate, for the most part, how these futures are going to move. And we do get Texas Instrument earnings after the close today. Now, we had Netflix before the open this morning, and that was initially some downside pressure, but we saw some of those leadership names, as I mentioned, Intel being up quite significantly, as well as Tesla, so helping to reverse some of that. And so we had Netflix disappointing today, Texas Instruments, even though it's a leader today, earnings after the close today, so that's something to keep an eye on, those NASDAQ futures. And then going through tomorrow, we get Intel's earnings tomorrow after the close. So those, I think, will be the biggest factors this week as how the NASDAQ performs and continue into next week when we really hit the heart of earnings season when you look at those NASDAQ 100 index and therefore the NASDAQ futures.